Have you ever heard of the porn star theory? It's a theory that a white female celebrity, if she drops a porn tape, her status in Hollywood, her bank account, her notoriety actually gets elevated. We've seen it with Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton, Pamela Anderson. But on the flip side, if a black female celebrity has a porn tape leaked or dropped, it's the end of them, and you never hear from them again. We saw it with Lawrence Fishburne's daughter, and we've seen it with the young lady from Family Matters and others. It's a societal double standard. You would be a fool if you were to believe that President Barack Obama could have the same resume as President Donald Trump and still become president of the United States. See, as a white man, you can have multiple marriages, you can be a felon, you can be sleeping with porn stars, you can be paying off people, you can not let, you don't have housing discrimination suits, you can have multiple lawsuits where you paid millions of dollars, you don't have to pay taxes, and you can still become president. This information will become relevant as I go through the video. But first, let's talk about some of the facts, not feelings, of why Shedeur Sanders fell in the NFL draft. Some of this is black, some of it is white, but most of it is gray. There's a gray area. And a lot of your analysts either don't have the nuanced intelligence to speak on it, or they're really strong one way or the other because that's how you get the engagement. That's how you get the clicks. That's how you get the likes. No matter what, the truth is, they don't want you to know that. Over the weekend, as it became apparent what was going on, I went into my Rolodex of individuals in the NFL. Excuse me, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold. And I talked to about 30 different people from all walks of life, media, scouts, people that work for organizations, some fixers, some other people that you probably, don't need to know about, to get the real about what was actually going on. And here's the number one thing that I heard. There clearly was a disconnect on Shedeur's evaluation. And this one we'll get to something what I like to call a false equivalency about black people in a second. Shedeur, clearly, by the way his party was set up, believed he had a lock first round grade. The people around him believe he had a lock first round grade. That was the evaluation that they had, that they believed it was impossible that he would drop out of the first round. As early as a couple of weeks ago, I started to hear that evaluation from multiple teams was shading more towards late first round, early second round evaluation. There were teams that felt like there was not much differentiation between Shedeur and a Jackson Dart and a Kyle McCord and a Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel. They felt they were all in the same tier, which gets to my second point of why he dropped in the draft. It's what I like to call the Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton rule. Some players are destined to be number twos. They're destined to be the guy that sits by the guy. The Chase Daniels of the world. The guy that supports the main guy. And a lot of times, teams, when they're drafting quarterbacks, They don't think that they're the guy. They think that they need a guy to be there for the guy. A Dylan Gabriel, Kyle McCord, a Will Howard, a Quinn Ewers. They don't think they're the guy. They're just the guy that's going to be behind the guy if needed. A Cooper Rush, so to speak. But Shedeur Sanders is not one of those guys. The reason why is he's the most popular player in the NFL draft. Immediately, he became the most popular player on the Cleveland Browns. You can look at their Instagram page just to see that. And when you have someone that popular, there's going to be a push for that individual to play. So when teams start getting into the second and the third and the fourth round, they were looking at either players that can help them immediately, or they were looking for a quarterback that can be the second guy. And that's not Shedeur Sanders. So it wasn't so much that his grade evaluation changed from that late first to early second. Is that a lot of teams don't feel he's the guy. They don't feel like he's a franchise quarterback. And when you don't feel like a guy is a franchise quarterback, you simply don't want to use a second, third, or fourth round pick on him because you feel like you can get an actual starter on the team. That part is not racist, right? That part is not racial. That part is just the way that the NFL works. What I also heard, and this goes back to the evaluation, is NFL teams do not like players who they don't deem to be elite to kind of dictate to them what they're doing. You know, Shedeur didn't participate in the combine. He didn't participate in the Senior Bowl. There were certain things that NFL teams wanted him to do, and him and his dad dictated how they wanted it to be done, which is perfectly fine if you know that you're going to be a first-round draft pick. But you have to be 100% sure. You have to be 100% sure. If you're 100% sure that there's a differentiation between you and these other guys, then yeah, you can do your own thing. You can have your own type of setup. You can deal with certain teams and not deal with certain other teams. You can have that power. But unfortunately, once the evaluation came in, other teams got put off by that because A, they did not feel like he was a franchise quarterback, so he should have been doing everything in his power to show them that they were wrong. Once again, that's not racist. That's not racial. That's just the way the NFL works. But it would be disingenuous to say there's not a racial component to this. Let me first speak about the false equivalency. You'll see a lot of white reporters, white media, white people say something to the effect, how can there be racism against Shedeur Sanders when Cam Ward went number one, when Jalen Milroe was picked before Shedeur, Will Howard, national champion, Quinn Ewers went to 2 playoffs, Kyle McCord, they all had to wait as well to get called in the draft. I like to assume that my Caucasian friends are just ignorant and not racist, but you never know. Because imagine if you were a white parent and your child was subject to police brutality, and then someone came up to you, a black person, and said, well, you know, this can't be police brutality because normally they don't do that to white kids, they do it to black kids. How would you feel about that? You would say one thing doesn't have to do with another, right? You would say, well, what happened with this white kid had nothing to do with the fact that my kid got beat up by the cops. That's exactly what you would say, right? Well, that's how you look when you say, well, Cam Ward went number one, so all of this other stuff can't be happening. That's the false equivalency. Then also, white people have a strange fascination, somewhat of a fetish, I would say, about humbling black men specifically. You need to be humble. I hope he's been humbled. I need him to be humbled. He's too confident. We got to call that cocky. Now, I find that hilarious in the sense that their hero, Donald Trump, has never been humbled, have never showed any humility, doubles down on his crazy talk. And they applaud that and follow that around like a cult. But one black guy shows his watch, has a little money, has a famous father, and he needs to be humbled. All I saw from the weekend was Shedeur Sanders spending a lot of time with his brothers, his family, his friends, and throwing a party. I mean, there's no different than Quinn Ewers with all those deer and the rabbits and the squirrels in the back. It's just a draft party. Is the draft party a little more lavish because he's Deion Sanders' son, the guy that went by prime time? I mean, yeah. So what? Has he ever broken the law? No. Drinking and driving? No. Ever put his hands on a woman? No. Ever been accused of any type of assault? No. Good grades? Yes. Good college student? Yes. Tough kid? Yes. Was the entire offense relied on him? Yes. Seems to be liked by his teammates? Yes. Did he spend his NIL money to get some of his old lineman cards? Yes. Off the field issues cannot be a personality trait. Okay? Being confident, being rich, being black cannot be an off the field issue. I saw someone from the NFL Network said teams were upset at his off the field issues. And they asked him, well, what off the field issues does he have? And he said he's confident. You know, the NFL is a lot like the Army. They want to break you. You've seen Brian DeBall's interactions with prospects. Now, some handle that better than others. But other people are like, you don't get to speak to me in those ways, those terms. What I found out about that interview with Brian DeBall was simply Shedeur pushed back. He pushed back on the way that he was being talked to. And Brian DeBall and apparently the Giants didn't like that. They wanted him to be humble. But it's interesting because I see these other quarterbacks in these rooms. Saw literally Will Howard tell a team that, you know, they would be fools if they didn't draft him. And nothing is said about that because that goes all the way back to the porn star theory. See, if you're white, you can do certain things and say certain things, and the type of descriptions that are put on you are different than when you're black. You know, Tim Tebow couldn't throw the ball 10 yards. But, you know, they still drafted him. You know, Johnny Manziel was on coke. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew he was a drunk. He still got drafted. If they believe that you're an elite talent, you could probably murder somebody and still get drafted. So it was a particular combination of circumstances that ended up with Shedeur being where he's at. You know, the evaluation was a little off. Maybe some of his decisions on how he went through the draft process could have been a little bit different. He's a mega star, and teams did not want to deal with the fact that once he was on the team, The fans were going to want him to start. There was some quote unquote humbling that they were expecting that they didn't get and that they shouldn't expect and that they don't expect out of other prospects because white people have a fascination with humbling black men. They don't like us to be confident and strong and speak our mind. They don't like that. That's only reserved for them, apparently. Eventually, somebody made the decision with the Browns. I don't know if it was the GM, could have been somebody else to select Shedeur. They're already making a bunch of money, off of him. Time will tell, just like with any quarterback, if he actually is good or not. But what happened during last weekend, something that you can all learn from. There's a lot of things that were going on last weekend that you can learn from. And if you're a rational person, an intelligent person, you can see what was going on. You can process it. You can get the information, and you can tell the real from the fake. You can tell the reasons why it happened, and then you can sit back and say, "Okay, I understand. It was a lot going on with this. It's a lot in the gumbo." But that's what I'm here for, to give you those facts, not feelings. If you're watching this, you probably have too much time on your hands, but I do appreciate you. If you can do me a favor, if you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, BSO TV, and our podcast, The Headline King with Robert Littal, and Facts Not Feelings with Robert Littal on all of your podcasting spaces, I would really appreciate that. We're doing daily, weekly videos, insider information, things that you won't be able to get on the website. So please subscribe to these spaces, and therefore you get to see my lovely face on a daily basis.